Americans born in the decades after World War II were handed the world on a silver platter.
Cheap college, cheap housing,
abundant opportunity.
The vast majority of you ended up wealthier than your parents.
And Lord knows it wasn't because you were smarter or worked harder.
It was because America was an escalator.
You just had to stand on it.
You've been an electoral powerhouse since the 80s.
When presented with a choice between protecting your interests
or investing in a better future for your children,
you usually chose yourselves.
Can you believe it?
More benefits for boomers.
More tax cuts for boomers.
And borrowed money to make up the difference.
Over the past quarter century, you've put almost $30 trillion on the national credit card. On behalf of future generations stuck with the bill, what is your problem?
What's your problem?
A year at a public university
costs almost 4 times as much as it did in 1970 after adjusting for inflation.
The average house costs more than 2 times as much.
And you made it difficult for younger Americans to live in the cities with the best jobs.
You regularly use your electoral might to squash
plans for new construction and protect your property values.
It's like you think democracy only exists so that you can band together en masse to freeze your communities in time.
You're the reason so many Americans sleep in their cars.
You're the reason that public schools today are more segregated than they were in 1968.
It's easy to blame the nation's political leaders.
But let's be clear, for the last few decades, they've mostly been members of your generation.
Elected with your support.
To protect your interests.
From the first boomer president, Bill Clinton,
to the current boomer president, who is hopefully the last one.
The Bush years were peak boomer. In 2001, when the government's coffers were overflowing,
you did what you always did.
You passed a giant tax cut, dividing the money amongst yourselves.
In 2003, you did it again.
And in 2006, you were all in for a big increase in government spending
on Medicare, just in time for the first boomer retirees.
You decided you'd rather have Walmarts than factory jobs.
And you didn't ask too many questions about the low price of your supersized flat screen TV.
You enjoyed the short-term benefits of deregulating the banking industry,
telecommunications,
and a host of other industries,
leaving future generations to clean up the mess of corporate consolidation and junk fees.
But hey, making things cheaper for yourself at everyone else's expense is kind of your MO.
You tree-hugging hippies championed environmentalism. But what is your legacy?
A world that keeps burning more carbon and a planet that keeps getting hotter.
Instead of actually confronting the problem, you embrace recycling. A con game that allows people to pretend they care about the planet without doing anything even a little difficult.
Like using fewer plastic bottles.
You exported your waste to less wealthy nations, or you just dumped it in the ocean. Thanks to you, there's an island of trash 3 times the size of France, swirling off the coast of California.
But don't think we're entirely ungrateful.
We appreciate the progress that you made on civil rights and gender equality.
Although you don't always seem to understand that there's still a lot of work to do.
Thanks for the avocados, some good music, and the World Wide Web. But maybe, instead of writing poster puns, it's time to write some apology notes.
It's a special interest. It's the utility companies and the petroleum companies and the other special interests. They're the ones that have blocked progress in the Congress of the United States and in the administration. That's a little straight talk.
We don't always see eye to eye, do we, Newt?
No, but we do agree our country must take action to address climate change.
We need to ultimately make clean, renewable energy the profitable kind of energy. So I ask this Congress to send me legislation that places a market-based cap on carbon pollution and drives the production of more renewable energy in America.
You do not think that human activity, the production of CO2, has caused warming to our planet?
I do not believe that human activity is causing these dramatic changes to our climate the way these scientists are portraying it.
The world's top climate panel has issued its direst appeal to date on the need to stop global warming. In a new report, the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says continued emissions of greenhouse gases will cause further warming and long-lasting changes in all components of the climate system, increasing the likelihood of severe, pervasive, and irreversible impacts.
Satellite data demonstrate for the last 17 years there's been zero warming, none whatsoever.
I think that there'll be little change here. It'll go up, it'll get a little cooler, it'll get a little warmer like it always has for millions of years. It'll get cooler, it'll get warmer. It's called weather. I think it's a big scam for a lot of people to make a lot of money.
Feeling the heat, so is planet Earth. Federal scientists announced today that 2015 was the warmest year on record, with land and ocean temperatures nearly 2 degrees above average.
A major setback tonight for President Obama's climate change initiative.
The U.S. Supreme Court stepped in to put the centerpiece of President Obama's climate change agenda on hold, pending the outcome of judicial appeals in the lower courts.
Trump's statement comes just a couple days after he released his first energy plan. He says he would, quote, cancel the Paris climate deal and promote more fossil fuels in the United States.
The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. Thank you.
It's been said that populism and Donald Trump were pushed to the center of American politics by the 2008 economic collapse and carnage. But 2008 was manufactured by bad policies that benefited no one but baby boomers. The baby boomer generation's impact on the US economy has been profound, with data showing that between 1980 and 2024, they accumulated $35 trillion in national debt, while inflating housing prices by 400% and quadrupling college costs. Today, boomers control 53% of US wealth, despite representing only 21% of the population. This economic imbalance has led to stagnant wages, crushing debt, and vanishing economic opportunity for millennials and Gen Z. Understanding the effects of boomer policies requires examining housing, education, wages, debt, and climate policy. Baby boomers didn't just buy homes, they weaponized them. In the 1970s and 80s, boomers purchased affordable starter homes with median prices around $47,000. Adjusted for inflation today, that's about $170,000. They then pulled up the ladder behind them. Once they owned property, boomers voted overwhelmingly for restrictive zoning laws that blocked new housing construction. Cities like San Francisco, Seattle, and Boston became boomer fortresses where single-family zoning prevented the density needed to accommodate growing populations. The result? Artificial scarcity that sent home prices skyrocketing. This is precisely how baby boomers ruined the economy for generations trying to build wealth through home ownership. Boomers turned housing from a basic need into a speculative asset class. They refinanced repeatedly to extract equity, treating homes like ATMs while younger generations couldn't even get their foot in the door. According to the Federal Reserve, home ownership rates for Americans under 35 have plummeted from 43% in 2005 to 35% by 2026. Boomers attended college when tuition was cheap, often just a few $100s per semester at public universities. Many worked part-time summer jobs and graduated debt-free. Then they systemically defunded higher education, concomitant to telling their children that they had to go to be successful. In 1980, the average cost for public university tuition was $1,800. Adjusted for inflation, that's around $6,500 per year. Now, the cost for public education is $29,000 per year. That's an increase of 442% since 1980. State legislatures, dominated by boomer politicians, slashed education funding by over 30% between 1990 and 2020. Universities compensated by jacking up tuition and relying on student loans. The result? $1.7 trillion in student debt, crushing an entire generation. When examining how baby boomers ruined the economy, the student debt crisis stands as one of the most damning pieces of evidence. But boomers didn't stop at making college unaffordable. They also devalued the degrees themselves by flooding the market with credential requirements for entry-level jobs. Now one needs a bachelor's degree just to answer phones, a job boomers did with a high school diploma. Boomers are the first and likely last generation to enjoy guaranteed pensions and Social Security. They lived through the golden generation of defined benefit retirement plans, then voted to eliminate them for future generations. In the 1980s and 90s, boomer-led corporations also systemically replaced pensions with 401k plans, shifting all investment risk onto workers. Meanwhile, boomers who had already locked in their pensions kept them. Corporate executives, mostly boomers, pocketed the savings. This pension bait and switch perfectly illustrates how baby boomers ruined the economy for future generations. Social Security was designed as a generational compact. Workers pay in, retirees draw out, but boomers are draining that system at an unprecedented rate. There's 10,000 boomers retiring per day. The projected insolvency for Social Security is thus 2034. Boomers have taken out far more than they pay into the system as well. The average boomer couple will receive $1 million in Social Security and Medicare benefits while contributing just $600,000 in taxes. Who's going to pay for that $400,000? Future generations. Boomers voted for massive government spending increases, especially on defense and Medicare, while simultaneously demanding tax cuts for themselves. The result is a $35 trillion national debt that millennials and Gen Z will spend their entire lives servicing. Let's look at the timeline of theft. In 1981, Reagan's tax cuts on the top 1%, which were boomer approved, slashed them from 70 to 28%. From 2001 to 2003, Bush's tax cuts further reduced revenue. In 2017 and 2025, Trump's tax cuts added respectively $1.9 trillion to the national debt and another $1.8 trillion to the national debt. Every single one of these cuts disproportionately benefited boomers at the peak of their earning years. Meanwhile, federal spending on education, infrastructure, and social programs for younger Americans was gutted. Understanding how baby boomers ruined the economy requires examining this deliberate debt and tax-cutting strategy that enriched one generation at the expense of all to follow. Boomers borrowed against the future and left younger generations holding the bill. They enjoyed the benefits of government spending without paying for it. The boomers' hoarding of wealth isn't an accident, it's the deliberate policy choices made by boomer politicians and voters over 4 decades. Every statistic, every chart, every data point confirms the same reality: how baby boomers ruined the economy through systemic wealth extraction disguised as economic growth. They didn't just benefit from prosperity, they actively rigged the system to transfer wealth upward while pulling the ladder up behind them. While boomers enjoyed union protections and strong labor laws earlier in their careers, they spent the next 40 years dismantling those same protections for younger workers. In 1983, union membership nationally was 20%. By 2024, that had dropped to 10%. This was driven by corporate-era right-to-work laws and corporate lobbying. Boomers voted overwhelmingly for politicians who gutted labor rights, outsourced manufacturing, and enabled the so-called gig economy that treats workers as disposable contractors. They extracted maximum value from corporate profits while ensuring younger workers had zero leverage. The wealth didn't trickle down, it flooded up, because boomers rigged the game, and then lectured younger generations about working harder. This isn't a partisan issue, it's a generational one. Both Democrats and Republicans are boomer-dominated establishments that prioritize their generation's interests over everyone else's. Democrats talk about student relief, then mean-test it into oblivion. Republicans cut taxes for the wealthy, then they bemoan deficits. Both parties protect Medicare and Social Security for boomers while slashing programs for everyone else. The uniparty establishment, boomer politicians on both sides, has one goal: preserve their wealth and their power. Neither party represents younger Americans. When you look at how the baby boomers ruined the economy, you see bipartisan cooperation. Both parties work together to transfer wealth upward and burden future generations with debt. Boomers also knew about climate change since the 70s. Scientists had warned them repeatedly. Instead of acting, they doubled down on fossil fuels, blocked renewable energy development, and left future generations with an unlivable planet and massive economic cleanup. The cost of climate inaction will fall entirely on millennials and Gen Z. Extreme weather, mass migration, and ecosystem collapse, all preventable if boomers had acted. But they chose short-term profits over long-term survival. Climate economists now calculate how baby boomers ruin the economy includes trillions in deferred environmental costs that younger generations must pay. The damage is done, but the future doesn't have to be boomer-controlled. Here's what needs to happen. 1. End housing as an investment. Implement vacancy taxes, ban corporate homeownership, and bulldoze restrictive zoning. 2. Cancel student debt. Full forgiveness, no means testing. Boomers got free college, we get debt relief. 3. Fix Social Security. Raise the cap on taxable income and means test benefits for wealthy boomers. 4. Tax wealth, not work. Capital gains should be taxed higher than wages. Make boomers pay their fair share. 5. Climate reparations. Carbon tax on corporations, with revenue funding green infrastructure jobs for young workers. Boomers won't fix this. Millennials and Gen Z have to. Every election, every protest, every policy fight is a chance to reclaim what the boomers stole from future generations. Baby boomers didn't just live through economic prosperity, they hoarded it, weaponized it, and left future generations to pick up the pieces. From housing to education to climate change, every major crisis facing millennials and Gen Z can be traced back to boomer policies and boomer greed. The economy didn't just happen to be unaffordable. Boomers made it that way. And until the generations that follow the boomers acknowledge how they ruined the economy through deliberate policy choices over 4 decades, the economy will never be fixed. It's not uncommon to hear that boomers built their wealth through hard work and smart decisions. However, this narrative overlooks the systemic advantages and policy changes that facilitated their economic success. For instance, boomers benefited from post-World War II economic booms, expansive homeownership subsidies, and tax policies that favored the wealthy. These factors, combined with their voting power, allowed them to create a wealth-concentrating system that younger generations could not replicate. Moreover, data shows that wealth inequality has skyrocketed since the 1980s, with the top 1% now holding more wealth than the bottom 90%. This isn't just about individual hard work, it's about how policy and economic structures have disproportionately benefited one generation over others. Baby boomers accumulated wealth through a combination of expansive homeownership, increased access to higher education, and policy decisions like tax cuts that disproportionately benefited them. They also held on to jobs longer, limiting opportunities for younger workers, and voted for policies that protected their financial interests. Addressing the economic imbalance requires policy reforms such as increasing taxes on wealth, implementing student loan forgiveness, and fixing Social Security to ensure it remains solvent. Additionally, affordable housing initiatives and climate policies that create green jobs can help redistribute wealth more equitably. While the issue here is framed generationally, it's fundamentally about economic fairness and policy accountability. The decisions made by boomers have long-term consequences for the entire economy, affecting not just millennials and Gen Z, but future generations as well. It's about ensuring that economic opportunities are available to all, regardless of age.